With less than 3 months between them, we get two high-quality Latter-day Saint-centric stories with a character called Mr. Reed. Now, with that very flimsy connection as a hook, let's rate American Primeval, which I'm giving a 4 out of 5 Brigham Youngs. Stick around to find out why. American Primeval wastes no time introducing us to a very bleak 1857 America. As director Peter Berg says, this is not a Western, and I'd have to agree with him that this does not follow the genre or tropes of a classical Western. It is much more of the vein of The Revenant or Power of the Dog. This series is unrelenting in its portrayal of the harsh and oppressive landscape, weather, and people from this time period. In this way, it can be difficult to binge watch. There's hardly a moment of levity in this whole series, which is fine, there doesn't need to be, but it can feel draining depending on your headspace to watch something so heavy and brooding in one sitting. American Primeval does scratch that itch when it comes to brutality and violence. It's not the bloodiest thing I've ever seen, but it does follow the similar vein of John Wick, Violent Nights. You'll recognize a shared language between them. What I mean by that is that it's hyper-violence that's very fluid and precise and choreographed in a way that feels grounded and gritty. There's a creative use of weaponry, and it doesn't refrain from showing an arrow entering the body, but it's also filmed the same. It follows that trend of having a one-shot take, beautifully orchestrated scene that depicts the conflicts. So I like this style, and I know a lot of people do, but it's also becoming fairly recognizable and common now. We can tell once we've entered that kind of scene. And so that's something that filmmakers are going to have to balance, as this way of filming is basically becoming a formula now and might need something to change it up and feel new. Nonetheless, like I said, it's satisfying and gross and brutal and has a wicked sense of fun to it. But man, you just feel so heavy and dark in this world. It's a constant back and forth between fun sequences and an unforgiving, nasty universe. This tone is just really hard to achieve, so props to the filmmakers there. It's an incredibly immersive world. The color grade, costume, makeup, music, cinematography, they all work together really well to achieve this. I will say that sometimes I'm back and forth with the camera work. On the one hand, it's pretty immersive. On the other hand, I just don't always like it. It's not my favorite style. It can be pretty nauseating, and sometimes it can have the opposite of the desired effect. It's meant to not be distracting and to feel documentarian and not draw attention to itself, but in reality, it often does draw attention to itself. So this comes down to a matter of preference, and a lot of you will 100% love it. I found myself loving it at times and longing for a stationary shot at others. I want to commend writer and series creator Mark L. Smith. He previously wrote The Revenant, and American Primeval benefits from this similar world building and character development. It takes a while for us to get to truly know our characters, but that investment pays off towards the end as we finally unlock details about the characters that start to inform their behaviors. Now, I will say that not every character and storyline gets equal treatment in this series. Ultimately, the characters we follow the most are the mother and son trying to get west, and we begin and end the series with their journey. In the meantime, Mark L. Smith manages to weave in and out a larger, more epic narrative about the Mormons, Mountain Meadows Massacre, and the rising tensions of the Utah War with the US Army. He does a really good job giving us distinct and separate storylines that feel episodic or like anthologies, but all have some connection or thread between them. Despite that, I feel that there are some storylines that are stronger than others, and I don't always agree with how the screen time is divvied up between them. There are some stories that I wish I could have gotten more of and gotten more context for and spent more time with those characters and teased out their motivations a little bit more. Personally, I felt like out of all the storylines that were going on, the series focused most and spent the most time on the least interesting one. Of course, mileage may vary. The mother-son storyline might be your favorite, but for me, I just found it less fascinating and exciting and more prone to trope and cliche purely because it's a story arc more immediately recognizable than the storylines focused on Brigham Young, Fort Bridger, Bill Hickman, Captain Edmund, and so on. These were the plot points that I was hungry for more context, backstory, development, and screen time. Especially Brigham Young. I mean, he was standout. I couldn't get enough of him. Kim Coates as Brigham Young was just a showstopper. He commanded so much screen presence and delivers by far the most layered and enigmatic performance of the series. I would have killed for him to be a more central character because I doubt we're getting another portrayal of Brigham Young anytime soon. Along with that, in general, I would have loved to learn a little bit more about Latter-day Saints, polygamy, what fueled their desire to establish Zion, how they justified their violence. But of course, this will always be a bias I have. I'll always long for deeper lore and screen time when it comes to the LDS tradition. I want to comment on how historical the series was. Yes, it technically is a fiction. The narrative we follow the most is fueled by fabricated characters. But I was surprised and delighted by just how grounded, in fact, the story was. For sake of spoilers, I won't get into specifics, but I highly recommend that while you watch, you stop and Google characters or events to see what's real, because it might surprise you. Especially the Mormon characters. There are quite a few that were real historic figures, and if anything, this series was successful because it piqued my curiosity into looking at this history, reading about Fort Bridger, Wild Bill, or the Mountain Meadows. Even one of the fictional characters, James Woolsey, I have a hunch is based off John D. Lee. So yeah, I think that's how you'll maximize your fun with the series. Get into the historical facts, see what's real and what was embellished. There's quite a bit that is real. But I think overall the creators wanted to take liberties in establishing the tone, so they chose to straddle the line so as to not be a slave to the strict historical narrative. So yeah, guys, 4 out of 5. I think the series is really solid, well done, a technical achievement, but purely just based on how the show emotionally drained me and what I'd wish I'd gotten more out of some of the storylines. I can't give it a perfect score alongside some of the greatest, most rewatchable TV shows ever made, but I wouldn't fault anyone for putting it on that pedestal. It came down to preference for me, and I think that there will definitely be some people who deservedly rank this among their favorite shows. So that's it for the review, you guys. Let me know what you thought of American Primeval. Do you agree or disagree? Please provide a good, rational, civil expounding of your opinion in the comments. You guys, I want to build a great community that can respectfully disagree, that recognizes it all comes down to subjective preference, and practices rhetoric and commenting behavior that is intelligent, reasoned, and civil. My biggest pet peeve is when people like something or dislike something so strongly and take offense when others don't agree, but they are unable to articulate why they liked or disliked it. So let's practice that in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought about American Primeval, or even if you're skipping it. And subscribe so we can build this community of like-minded, regular, level-headed people who enjoy talking about movies. As always, Mom, thanks for watching, and the rest of you, stay average.